Hello, this is Mr. Timchek teaching how to lay out a wall plate today. Now I have a 4-foot stud here, and we're going to lay out a 4-foot wall. This right here, the stud that we're going to be marking, this is our bottom plate. I like to lay out our bottom plates first, and then move on to the top plates, and we'll get into that in a bit. So, the first stud to lay out on our wall is our end stud. Alright, so it's going to go 1.5 inches this way. We're going to make it a mark at 1.5 inches. You can see that's where I marked it on my speed square. I'm going to turn my speed square around, line it up with the center of my crow's foot, and draw a line. I'm going to mark an X where the stud is. Anywhere where there's an X, that is the stud location. Now the on-center spacing that we're going to use here is 16 inches on center. The reason we use 16 inches on center, that's because it breaks evenly with our 4-foot by 8-foot sheet goods that we use to sheathe our walls. So we have our first stud there, and our next stud is going to be 16 on center. All right, on the center line. So it's real easy to find where the 16 on centers is on a tape measure because everything that's divisible by 16 is highlighted in red. So we have 16 there, and then we have 32, and then we have 48. So we want the center of the stud directly in the middle of the 16-inch mark. So we're going to go 3/4 inches to the left and 3/4 inches to the right and mark that with a crow's foot. Why do we go 3/4 of an inch? It's because a 2x4 or any kind of 2x lumber is 1.5 inches wide, and so the center of it would be at 3/4. So if we go 3/4 this way and 3/4 this way, and on the edges, the center of the 2x will be directly on 16 inches. That's very important to know that you don't put the stud edge right on 16, but the center of the stud goes on 16. And right here, I'm just going to show, this is a little overkill. Most framers don't like to mark both locations, but I'll mark 3/4 to the left, which is 15 1/4, and then 3/4 to the right, which is 16 3/4. Mark both locations. Take the speed square, mark an X. Then we go to the next stud location. 32 inches. All right, and this is how traditional framers will do it. Here's 32 right there. They're going to mark it 3/4 to the left. Make the mark there. And then they're just going to draw one line because framing is all about speed. They're just going to draw an X on which side of the line your stud goes to. And then so we know that if we put our stud right here, it'll be on the center. We only have to line up one line, not both. So that's kind of what you'll typically see out in the field, or is that you'll just have one line for each stud, and then it'll be directly 32 inches on center for that stud. All right. So we marked out these studs. I'll mark out the end here. I'll just flip it over. Like I said, 1.5 inches from the edge. Just use my speed square ruler for that. Mark it out. All right. So this plate is ready to go, and I like to label bottom plate. All right. So this particular bottom plate is actually our load bearing wall. So LBW. And what our load bearing wall needs is a California corner or California stud or a insulated corner. And the reason for that is that this is the exterior load bearing wall. This is holding the weight of the rafters above. So we're going to put a stud here. We already have that marked. This wall right here that's coming in, all right, is our interior loading wall, non-load bearing wall. And you're going to have this coming in here, this coming in here. Let me raise up the camera. All right, so that's the wall coming in to the load bearing wall, and these have to be attached some way. And so what we do is we put this California corner stud just like this, and then this will be nailed in here and here. And so that's how these two walls attach. So we got to mark out our stud location for here, our California stud. You can notice that traditionally your studs are like this, but this stud is going to be flat facing inwards to our wall that's coming in. So this is the non-load bearing wall, exterior coming in to your load bearing wall that has the California corner. So we're going to account for that in our layout. Our layout is our blueprint for everything that's going to follow. All right. So we're going to lay that out. And a real easy way to lay out your California corners is honestly just get a scrap 2x like I have here and just trace it. There it is. That's the dummy way of doing it, and so that you don't make a mistake. There's no problem doing it that way. Now, you do have to make sure that we label it on this side, that we also label it on the correct side. It would be on the same side that we labeled down there. So it would be just to get it in view here. So we have our stud location, stud, and then we have our California corner right there. All right, so it's on the same side, mark it with an X, same side as it is over here. That's also a common mistake. All right, so we got that laid out. This is our load bearing wall. Looks good. Now, you always want to label your top and bottom plates together. So I'll lay them out flat, line them up here. And the reason why speed squares are 7 inches long, as you can see here, is that they can go across 3.5 and a 3.5 flat 2x4, and you can mark both 2x4s at the same time. Just make sure they're both very even. Go this way. All right, now here's the tricky part. You have to imagine that this top plate is going like this, folding over. All right. onto the bottom plate. So this is the top plate, TP, bottom plate. All right. So if this California corner was marked there, it would actually end up being on the wrong side. So it's a mirror image. So we actually need it here. So when it folds over, it'll be on the correct side above the bottom plate stud location. All right, and I'll just kind of cheat here and put my X there for my California stud. All right, and there it is. So that's the, and then the other thing, the next step is that you not only have to mark the flat of your framing, you also have to mark the top edge, because when you're nailing it together, you nail it looking like this. Let's slide this out of the way. You're going to fasten the studs coming from this way, and you're not going to have a real clear view of where all your markings are. So you need to have your top edges marked just like this. So I'll kind of line up my top edge just like this. Now you generally don't mark where your California corner is, but you can. They're traditionally nailed together, the stud. But like this stud right here, I need to mark the edge. All right, and this stud as well. I mark the edge. Always put an X. And then always line them up together to make sure that the top and bottom, match up, so the studs will be in the same location on both the top and bottom plates. All right, and then you'll just spread them apart, and then you'll know a little too much. There you go. You'll spread them apart, and you just line it up where your studs are, and that's how you'll assemble it. All right, and that's how you label and lay out your top and bottom plate. Now, next step, you just start assembling your wall. All right, that's how to lay out a top and bottom plate.